Joseph Biden, Karen Bass, Gavin Newsom, James Woods, Smokey the Bear. It's all y'all mother fault. I lived in LA for 15 years. And yeah, one person. All right, cool. Yeah, thank you. That's usually the vibe in Northern California. Not a lot of enthusiasm for LA. I know it sucks. There's always been this NorCal SoCal rivalry, but it's really just NorCal hating on SoCal. It really is. You go to SoCal and you're like, hey, what do you think about NorCal? They're like, oh, I love it. It's a great place. It's really cool to visit. And then you go to NorCal, you're like, what about LA? You're like, those motherfuckers, dude. They think they're so cool, dude. I'm from NorCal. I'm hella better than them. You go to SoCal, they're like, yeah, they're cool. They say hello a lot, but they're cool. And so I lived in LA for 15 years, and finally last year I gave up my lease. I was in the same apartment in Studio City. Studio City is where I live. Studio City, they call it Studio City because it has a lot of studio apartments, which is like, it's the only city named after why you're broke. Like, I've never heard of one bed, one bath village. I've never heard of the guest house district, but Studio City is where it's at. I lived there for 15 years, and the apartment, I just found out that the apartment that I used to live in is under evacuation right now because of one of many fires that are nearby it. And it's really sad. And so I was just reminiscing on how much I loved that place. And I remember, like, when I left, I literally shed a tear because I loved being there so much. It had this beautiful view of the mountains, and people in that neighborhood were so chill. Like, it was interesting too, because I lived on this corner where it was like, one neighborhood was like all Armenian, one neighborhood was all Jewish. It was basically like if Jerusalem had Mexicans, you know what I mean? It was like, it was like if you put Jerusalem inside of Mexico, it would have been, that's how it felt. And I love that neighborhood. And I remember when I left, the day I packed up and left my apartment was September 21st. I remember because I turned on that song, do you remember the 21st night of September? And I reminisced, but I'm like, oh, not a great time to talk about Earth, Wind, and Fire. So I'm going to talk about the LA fires for like 20 minutes. I'm sorry. It's my issue with this is that this fire is becoming highly divisive, which is really sad because, you know, people are actually really suffering down there. And I lived in LA for 15 years, so like half of my friends in this industry are in Los Angeles, and some of them have lost their homes. It's a horrible situation, and I'm like checking in with them. I'm seeing who's okay, seeing who's evacuating right now, and definitely not helping LA's homeless problem. But listen, okay, so... And now I have so many friends who are affected, like I can't even use the fire emoji, it's insensitive. So there's a lot of problems. But I'm making it about me. I shouldn't do that. A lot of people are suffering, and this is why I wrote notes, because I'm like, if they don't like it, I'm gonna have to move on very quickly. You're gonna okay. If this goes well, you're gonna see it on YouTube in a few days, and you're gonna be like, we were there. And if it doesn't go well, you're gonna be like, oh wow, we really missed out on that opportunity. No, seriously, if this doesn't go well, I'm gonna have to do it in Bakersfield in 2 days. So, oh yeah, now the competition's on, huh? You're like, we will not let the Central Valley win. Even though you're kind of in it, but you're kind of... I know that's a very sensitive subject in SAC. Like, we're not the Central Valley. Like, motherfucker, you're in the valley. It is in the center of the state. You're in the Central Valley. You're like, we do politics. We don't farm. We tell the farmers what to do. But I wanted to do this material, and specifically in Sacramento, because it has to do with this, man. It has to do with this, man. Because, naturally when something bad happens, we look to something or someone to blame, right? It's human nature. We want to blame something. And I still identify as an LA person. I lived there for 15 years. So as an LA person, this is really tough because Mercury retrograde ended like 3 weeks ago. So we can't blame the stars. ISIS has not claimed responsibility yet. It's really tough. And then there's people around the United States who are like blaming Californians. They're like lumping us all in on this. They're saying like, oh, it's karma. The fires are karma because they vote for Kamala every time or whatever they think, whatever they think it is about us. Because they have such good weather, it's karma. I don't know. It's such a lame take, dude. Like, first of all, no state is exempt from natural disasters. There's literally no state. I looked it up. Like, most places in the world have some kind of imminent natural disaster coming to them. Ironically, the 2 safest places in the world are Saudi Arabia and Qatar. Which are, super safe. Which is kind of ironic. Because if you know about like the history of like terrorism, I'm gonna use air quotes, terrorism and like where our traditional known terrorists came from, it was all because of seeds that started in Saudi or Qatar. And so it's funny because like that's how bored they get there. You know what I mean? That they're like, oh, 0 crime rate, no natural disaster. Like, let's stir something up a little bit, so. Most places have natural disasters, and every state in the United States is subject to its own natural disaster. So the moment you say, like, a state deserves this, like, that's a f***ed up thing to say. Like, people are going to have their hurricanes, their floods, their fires. I will accept that all states are f***ed or no states are f***ed. You know what I mean? Like, if you're going to say that one state has karma, you have to agree all states have bad karma. And I would say that's probably the case. You know what I mean? Because if you look at what happened to indigenous people in this country, I don't know if you guys know about this in Sacramento, but there were indigenous people in this country before we got here, before they even found the gold, if you believe it or not. And so the indigenous people were here, and basically, in some shape or form, they all got displaced or killed. And some of them displaced multiple times. You know what I mean? So if you were an indigenous person who lived here before the United States was settled, you were displaced at least once. We know this, at least once. So there's probably a stat out there that shows that most people in the United States at some point will be displaced because of a natural disaster. If it's, and I assure you, it's probably not more than one. It's probably just one. Everybody averages one or less. So you're getting a good deal, dude, is what I'm saying. So it's collective karma. We're all equally. If you're in a state and you think another state has bad karma, not you, you're on fentanyl for sure. And that's most states as well, actually. So one of my friends in Texas, he's like, yeah, California is what you get. You think you're all smug. Now the fires are burning. Like, well, this whole fire is just making more Texans. I don't know if you know that. So the Texodus is beginning. All right. Take these one at a time, guys. Hopefully Bakersfield doesn't like them better. We need something to blame. And so naturally, a lot of people blame the climate. People are like, it's the climate. Like, well, you're just going to go to war against the climate? You know what I mean? Like, I'm going to fight a volcano today. I'm just going to fight the element of fire, you know? People are like, no, it's climate change. Like, okay. I do believe in climate change. I think climate change is more complex than we even know. I think part of it is cyclical and a lot of it is man-made. Human-made. They made. It is gender-neutrally made. Climate change. Okay? So I do believe that climate change exists, but it's like that doesn't mean that we can't just do nothing about what happens because of it. You know what I mean? Like, we gotta do something while these disasters are happening. You know what I'm saying? And so these you know what I'm saying? These people get upset if you start to blame the government. Like, it's not the government. Nobody would have expected there'd be this much wind. In January? Bro, I've lived in California my whole life. January is the windiest month. Like, hands down, there is wind in January. I lived in LA for 15 years. There's a lot of wind in January. Dude, the wind was not out of the blue, okay? Wind comes every winter. That's why it's called winter, okay? Somebody was like, yeah, but nobody would have expected no rain in January. I'm like, we're only 10 days in, dude, okay? Like, you know the last time that LA had no rain, the first 10 days of January? Last year, dude. This has been happening for a while. And then now there's stories of arson going around. This may be the case. There may be people out there having started some of these fires. And if that's the case, those people, obviously. But we still got to put the mother out. It doesn't matter if it was wind, PG&E, or a guy with a bottle and fire, with a Molotov cocktail. Put the fire out. And it could have, yeah, it was PG&E for sure. But it for sure was PG&E. But of all the things to blame and not to blame, we all know the firefighters are heroes. Okay, the firefighters are heroes. You're not clapping for some reason, you He's like, I lost my spouse to a firefighter. You gotta admit, firefighters are hot. You know what I mean? They're both literally and figuratively. They're very hot. But yes, at some point we do realize there are people to blame, because when these fires happened, I decided to do this wild thing. I decided to Google who's supposed to put out fires. Yeah, and then it says firefighters, obviously. But then you scroll down a little bit more, and apparently on federal lands, the federal government has the responsibility of putting out fires. And federal lands are in every state. I think they're in every state. I don't know, maybe like they're like, we don't want anything here in Missouri, actually, but I'm pretty sure they're in every state. I didn't look that up, I'm sorry. On state lands, it's up to the state. So if it's California state lands, it is up to the state. And if it's what's that? Cal Fire. All right. Are we cheering for it, or are we? Yeah. Because we put it out, right? We put that out. Yeah. Good. Yeah, that's cool. At least we know you can cheer on fires that are done, right? Yeah. Like Campfire 2020. Yeah, dude. We put that out. Yes, on state lands, it is the responsibility of the state. And on private lands, we pay property taxes that fund local fire departments, okay? That's why it is a local responsibility to put out fires on private property. Now, obviously, firefighters do their best with what they have, okay? But sometimes there are limitations. The first thing I would do in looking at who's responsible, I would look at the local government, okay? And so in Los Angeles specifically, you have Zionists, a lot of Zionists. It all comes back.
I got you, boo, I
And I'm hoping this piece draws in a general audience. So for those of you general audiences, look up Zionist and enjoy that rabbit hole. So first, I would look at the local government, and there was a lot of problems with putting out this fire. The firefighters were doing their absolute best, but there was limited water reserves in certain areas. There was limited staffing on the firefighters, and so naturally you ask why? Why was this? And then you look at the LA city, which actually does control these parts where these fires are. Not all of them. Certain districts are controlled by certain districts. Okay. I might have to edit this in post and be like, jurisdictions. But the general LA city does in fact control a lot of where these fires are, and there were cuts to the fire budget in the last year. Now I'm going to be very specific and careful when I talk about this, because people have been getting very upset with this narrative that the fire budget was cut in the last year. But it was in fact cut. Okay, it was in fact cut, and it was cut specifically by the mayor's administration, the mayor Karen Bass. Karen Bass, who personally I think should resign as mayor. And I would even go so far to say she should resign as a Karen because say what you will about Karens, at least they get done. Okay? And so Karen Bass, in her administration's planning for the budget, did in fact cut the fire budget for this fiscal year. Now, a lot of people are upset about this particular statement because they were planning to increase the fire budget as time went on. However, that leaves this year very vulnerable. Like, that is clearly a problem that leadership foresight could have prevented. Like, yes, I'm glad that you're forward thinking and caring about the future, but you have to take care of now too. Can you imagine if you were on a plane, on a flight, and the pilot comes in like,
just want to let you guys know, I am still in training, okay? But, so I actually don't know how to land this thing. But here's the good news. In 2 years from now, I'll be done with my certification, and I'll be better than any pilot you've had previously, okay? So in 2 years from now, this flight will be better than your last flight, for sure. Sorry, your previous flight, because this is your last flight, in fact. So, seatbelts.
you got to take care of now, you know? And so there's a lot of people defending the local and state governments. And it's interesting. It's almost like, it feels like propaganda. It feels like propaganda is being spread so that we don't actually look at who's culpable for these fires, which is ironic. I wish propaganda was made of water, because it's the one thing that actually spreads faster than wildfire. And so the local administration, they did what you would expect from any government. They blamed federal and state. They said, we didn't get proper funding from federal, we didn't get proper funding from state. So now let's look at state, okay? Let's look at state. Gavin Newsom, okay? Gavin, our boy Gavin Newsom, okay? Listen. Say what you want about Gavin Newsom, okay? During COVID, he threw the best parties. And I was there, masks off, having a good time. Okay? But Gavin, man of the people. Man of the people who's named Gavin. Not a very, Gavin is a very rich name, you know what I mean? Nobody's ever like, my boy Gavin and I, no, it's more like me and Gavin are going wine tasting. Gavin. So Gavin flies down to LA and does like a photo shoot in front of burning houses. Totally unnecessary. I get it. Shows solidarity with the people, but like it was so staged. He just like find a burning house, and I'll get in front and I'll put on my hat. And Gavin Newsom has like a very raspy voice, which doesn't really help like this situation, because we're like, we need more water, and so do you. You know what I mean?
We're gonna put out these fires. We're here. We're gonna put out the fires. That's what we're gonna do.
It was funny because I think this was on CNN. I think it was Anderson Cooper was there. Correct me if I'm wrong. It was Anderson Cooper. Anderson Cooper was like, hey, Gavin, why is there no water in this fire hydrant? He's like, well, that's a local thing, obviously. Just like threw it off to the locals, you know? And then he also had mentioned that we didn't have enough federal funding. So then now we look to the federal level. Turn away. Sorry for bothering you. We look at the federal level, and ultimately the federal government is in charge of everything. The federal government oversees everything. Ultimately, they are the highest level of responsibility, and obviously we want a leader who we can look to solve our biggest and most urgent problems. And fortunately, we have Joseph Biden in the White House. He's still there. That's crazy that he's still there. Like, it's, you know, say what you will about Genocide Joe, but he's still alive. That guy's still alive. But obviously, you know, put your politics aside for a moment and pray for the best and hope that your president does the right thing. You know what I mean? So he does a press conference with Gavin Newsom. They get together, they do a press conference, and everybody's like, please, Biden, you're going to help the fires. Please. Thank you. We're waiting for you. Please. And then he gets on stage. He's like, I just became the first president great-grandfather. Like, what the f*** are you talking about? We do not give a that you are a great-grandfather right now. We need you to put out fires, not talk about how your grandchildren are out there making babies, okay? Don't remind us how old you are in the time that we need you the most. He literally did. He literally came out. He's like, I'm the first president who's a great-grandfather. Like, cool. Not a time for milestones, okay? Fortunately, Biden came through with $8 billion to fight the fires in California. But, I'm sorry, that was actually for Israel to fight hospitals, actually. Basically, Biden, I do believe, has released some federal funds to the cause, which is good. But he also made some jabs at state and local, saying that, hey, it's not entirely on us. And then obviously Trump, the incoming president, was like, it's all Gavin Newsom, So it's like, okay, cool. Federal blames state and local. State blames federal and local. Local blames federal and state. So basically, it's all y'all fault. You know what I mean? It's all y'all fault. It's clearly you're just playing a finger pointing. Oh no, it was me. Like, it's all y'all fault. Okay. Now, of course, people want to hold the people of LA responsible too. Listen, I get it. Yes, if you live in a fire-prone area, you probably want to do your best to prevent your specific house from getting caught on fire. But ultimately, Google whose responsibility it is to prevent and manage forest fires. It is the government, dude. It is the government. And you probably think back to Smokey the Bear. Right? Growing up, Smokey the Bear was an icon, and he got on screen every time. He looked straight kids in the eye, and he was like, only you can prevent forest fires. And it's like, me? Me? I'm the chosen one? I'm the chosen one to prevent forest fires. I'm 4 years old. I've never even been to a forest by myself. And I can prevent forest fires. And now looking back, you realize that was propaganda. That was propaganda. That was them saying, hey, do our job for us. And yes, every person should be aware of how to not start a fire. Obviously, that's a good thing to do. But like, Smokey the Bear was designed to be like, hey, it's on you if there's a fire. And we never questioned how weird that was anyways. Smokey the Bear was a bear who just wore pants and a hat. No shirt, just full-on grizzly chest. Full-on grizzly chest, and then just pants. Pants and no shirt. He was like an inverse Winnie the Pooh. You know what I mean? He was like an inverse. Remember Winnie the Pooh had the shirt and no pants? But then his cousin Smokey is somehow a little more presentable and responsible. And so then naturally, everybody wants to blame the insurance agencies. And listen, insurance agencies are not trustworthy. They're sharks, but they're businesses. They operate as businesses. You always have to keep in mind businesses are businesses, and insurance is a business. They're trying to make a profit. The principle of insurance is, hey, you're going to pay me every month, and if something happens to you, I'm going to give you the least amount of money possible. And you're like, well, that sounds like a great deal. Sign. It's really on us for trusting insurance agencies, but I get it. You got to have insurance nowadays. But recently, a bunch of insurance agencies pulled out fire insurance for these LA properties. But like, they were just making a business decision that made sense for them. It would have been insane for them to say, but like, a lot of them pulled out. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is gone. You know what I mean? Like, but I'll tell you what, fire insurance CEOs, they're scared of shit right now. They're like looking around. They're like, extra security. Like, is that guy a Mario? I can't, no Marios, no Luigis. The bottom line is, as people watching this happen to others, you gotta have empathy, man. Losing your home sucks, dude. Losing your home sucks. Whether you're in Palisades or Palestine, losing your home sucks. I feel so sorry for the people in LA right now, you know? It's like, y'all are Palestinians now. You know what I mean? Like, losing a home is a shared struggle. I have a adopted little brother in Gaza, and he messaged me because he knows that I'm back and forth between LA, and he's like, I'm worried about you. Is everything okay? And I'm like, I'm fine, but I have friends who all lost their homes. He's like, I feel very bad for them. I share their pain with them. This is a guy who lost his home 12 times in the last year. And so if you've been through it, you get it. You got to have empathy for people. Now, obviously, occasionally there's a person who something bad happens to them and you're like, yeah, like yes, it's a human thing. It's a human thing. And yes, with like big Hollywood people, there might be someone you don't like. Specifically, there was an incident, big Hollywood guy, James Woods, James Woods, you guys are fans? James Woods, well, let's be honest, Woods, kind of a flammable name already, you know what I mean? Like, it's already in dangerous territories, you know what I mean? His house burned down. Listen, humanity, you got to remember that sucks, okay? Somebody loses their house. You do look back at some of his tweets, and he said some of the worst about Gaza. He said, bomb them all. No mercy, bomb them all. And people argued with him. He'd call them, you, Hamas supporter. Go harder. He said, no surrender. Israel will keep going. But it's like, you got to have sympathy for that guy, too. You know what I mean? Like, yes, he lost his home, and like part of me wants to just like whisper in his ear, like,
Now you probably want a ceasefire.
like, you know, like, yes. But you have to have empathy for people. We want this fire to stop. We want these fires to end, okay? From the 405 to the sea, Palisades will be free from fire. Now, obviously, people get upset when I make jokes on these current event topics. They're like, why do you make jokes during a tragedy? Why are you just gonna go make jokes during a tragedy? I'm like, what? Do you know me? Why do I make jokes during a tragedy? I only make jokes during a tragedy. That's the only time I make jokes, because life is tragic and we have to process it somehow, okay? It's about the choices you make in those jokes that matter, okay? And my thing is, I like to be solutions oriented, okay? My name is Sammy Obeid. It's my initials, solutions oriented, okay? I always like to think, how are we going to stop this, okay? Because this fire should not be tearing us apart. It should be bringing us together. That's what fires do. A campfire, we sit all around a campfire, roast marshmallows, roast each other a little bit, you know what I mean? Fires should be bringing us together. They should not be tearing us apart. But we got to stop them, and we got to make this about everyone. If you want to talk about climate change, fine. But how are we going to manage it until we fix it as a global issue? Like, the thing about America is that we have all the weather patterns in the world. They're just in the wrong places, right? Like every winter, the East Coast fucking freezes, the Midwest freezes, right? The South gets flooded with water. Parts of the middle of the country get flooded with water, and then the West Coast, we're just in a drought, long-term drought, and we're just burning every summer and now winter, just burning. And so it's like we have all the different kinds of weather. We just need to share the love a little bit. You know, how can we mix and match and share the weather? So I thought about it because on the West Coast, we have a lot of sunshine. That's why we have a drought. So we should cover the West Coast in solar panels. Just as many places as we can. The places we don't care about, obviously, Bakersfield, Fresno. Cover them in solar panels. If I was in Bakersfield, I would have said Sacramento. I'm just kidding. I would have said Lodi. But cover the Central Valley in solar panels. Like Nevada should just be one big solar panel, all right? And that's so much heat energy that we can gather up and conduct through a rod. It'll go across the United States to the East Coast and Midwest to warm them up during the winter. It'll be called the Great American Hot Rod. People are going to vote for this, dude. People are going to vote for this. Because people always blame us for like, oh, California's taking all of our resources. Like, no, we're giving back. We're giving you the sunshine and the warmth every winter through the Great American Hot Rod, baby. Right? And that will warm places up. And the whole West Coast will participate in this, you know, with Nevada, Utah, Idaho. Anybody who got sun, you're going to conduct through the rod. And it'll go to the West Coast, it'll go to the East Coast and the Midwest, and it will melt their snow. It'll melt their snow in the winter. And that's going to be a lot of excess water, plus the flooding in the South, right? We collect all of that excess water through a massive drainage system, okay? Funnel it into a duct, an aqueduct, run it back across the country to the West Coast to feed our crops. And yeah, so we're gonna build a duct. Mexico's gonna pay for it. We're gonna build a duct. And it's gonna be, now here's, because some people are not gonna be on board with this, right? But here's how we win people over. We're going to build it along the southern border so it doubles as a border and an aqueduct. So we're not building a wall because that's, you know, that's too divisive. You know what I mean? But we build an aqueduct, right? And it's a challenge. Like, because if you really want to get in this country, you got to swim across an aqueduct. But if you can swim across an aqueduct, you deserve to be in this country, dude. That's, yeah, those aren't illegal immigrants. Those are our Olympic gold medal swimmers. Swimming across an aqueduct, okay? And people have already given me shit for this theory. They're like, Sammy, how do you even think water is going to flow? How do you even know water is going to flow from east to west? Because I did the math. I actually looked at the altitude of Houston is about 10 meters above sea level. The altitude of San Diego is about 0 meters. So we got 10 meters of vertical to work with. And you're like, that's not a lot, but using Pythagorean theorem, we can make it work. So yeah, that's what we're gonna do. I already got the slogan, duct or we're so yeah. All right, that's it for me, guys. Thank you so much. I love you all. I love you guys so much. I'll be back. Oh.